Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on ConnectWise CPQ, the five-step quoting process. My name is Mitchell, and I'll be one of your hosts today. And joining me is...
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Ugochukwu, and I'm a software training consultant here at ConnectWise. I'm based in Denver, Colorado, and I'm a subject matter expert in the ConnectWise Business Management Suite of products. And that includes PSA, formerly Manage, CPQ, formerly Sell, and IT Boost. My favorite CPQ feature is quote templates, and I'm really excited to talk with you about quote templates today.
As I mentioned before, my name is Mitchell Rollo. I'm also a software training consultant here at ConnectWise. I'm based out of our Tampa offices in Florida. I'd also focus on our BMS products, PSA, CPQ, and IT Boost. And I'm excited that I get to talk so much about my favorite CPQ feature, which would be Order Porter, the interactive landing page for your quotes. Now, we have a lot on our plate today. We have the 5 main steps of your quoting process we're going to be walking through. First, that's going to be that you should be creating a quote from a template. Those are those quote templates Jennifer just mentioned a second ago. Next up, we'll be walking through the importance of assigning both a customer and a title, and some tools you have to make that step a little easier. Next, we want to talk about really the bulk of the quoting process, adding those products and services, determining what exactly it is you're selling and how those are presented to the customer. Then I'll walk through the publish, review, and deliver step where you can go ahead and actually create the quote itself that the customer is going to see, review it to make sure it looks good to go, and then finally deliver it out. And finally, we'll walk through what it looks like to sync all that information from your CPQ quote back to that ConnectWise PSA opportunity. That way, PSA can continue to be your single source of truth. And for today's webinar, we're going to be focusing in on a single business case, kind of walking us through that whole process end to end, following through this one use case. And, well, good news. We have qualified a new lead, and they are fit for our network rack installation services and are interested in working with our team. This solution is actually fairly complex. It's made up of hardware, cabling, labor, and there's going to be some ongoing monitoring, and we need to make sure all of that is quoted for. We'll use this example to kind of highlight how this scenario would be quoted for, and then apply that out to any of the various scenarios you may come across when you're creating quotes.
All right, thank you for that introduction, Mitchell. So now we're going to start the 5-step quoting process with the foundation of our quoting process, and that's create a quote from a template. And we'll see that this is the foundation of the 5-step quoting process because it sets us up for success. First, we want to start from a PSA opportunity, and that's because PSA opportunities allow us to track sales as they move through the sales life cycle. So as you can see here, we're on a PSA opportunity, and in the opportunity pod, we have key information about our opportunity, like next steps, close date, but I wanted to draw your attention to 2 key features that help us track the sales life cycle, and that's the stage and status properties. So the stage field allows you to set the sales lifecycle stage that the opportunity is at, and the stage is configured in the PSA by your team. Next, you have the status field, and that field determines whether the opportunity is open and still being worked or closed and uneditable, a historical record. We also have some source and campaign fields that help you track where your opportunity came from. So in our example, it's from a trade show, and we have set a specific campaign that can be used for reporting purposes. Also, we have the inside sales rep and sales rep field that help you track who is working the opportunity. And we'll see in a moment that these fields will actually carry over to the quote when we create a quote from an opportunity. Next, in our PSA opportunity, we have the forecast pod. And the forecast pod is really important because here you can add products or estimates to an opportunity. And we recommend adding estimates to an opportunity when the opportunity is qualified so that if you have sales team members entering estimates, they don't need to know the specific manufacturer, part number, or product ID to quickly enter the information about what they're selling to customers. So they can quickly add estimates, and these estimates can be used when creating a quote. So I'd like to ask you, What are some roadblocks that you face when quoting? So feel free to use the chat now and let us know. What are some roadblocks that you face when quoting? All right, so some roadblocks that you might face are that it takes too long to quote. So your team spends too much time looking for information in the opportunity and not enough time quoting and servicing your customers. Also, there are inconsistencies. So perhaps there are different templates or features your team wants to use in quotes, but it's not consistent across all quotes. So we can solve for this using quote templates in CPQ. And quote templates simplify and standardize the quoting process by applying default settings to new quotes. All right, good. And I see a response here. We have some stack of services that might be quoted for. So building a standard set of services that align with the customer is really important. Thank you for sharing that. So we can solve for this using quote templates as well by standardizing our quoting process using templates. So every time you create a new quote in CPQ, you'll be creating the quote from a template. And you'll navigate to the new quote screen when you click that new quote button in CPQ. And then from here, just click the new item icon to create a new quote from that template. And quote templates are easy to create. If you're creating an individual quote and you make changes to it and you realize you really want those changes available to the rest of your team, simply navigate to the quote setup screen and click Save as Template. You can also download and install quotes that your team can use so that you always have new content available for your team. So you can find this in the Content Vault. So click the settings icon and select Quick Search. In the Quick Search field, you can type Content Vault and you'll be taken to the Content Vault screen where you can either select and install individual templates or entire Content Vault template packages. So this really makes it easy to get templates ready for your team to use. Another great feature about quote templates is that if you're using Teams and CPQ, you can restrict templates so that they're only available to certain teams. So if you create or edit a new team in the team profile, just select restrict templates, and this will restrict the templates that are available to that specific team. So now let's go ahead and create a new opportunity, a new quote from an opportunity. So we're back in our PSA opportunity and go ahead and click the quote button in the toolbar. This will open a new window in the PSA desktop or a new browser tab in the browser version, and you'll be in a new quote screen where you can click the new item icon to create a new quote. And in our example, I'll use the detailed hardware software template to quote for the hardware and services in this example. Another thing on this screen is that if you find yourself using the same templates over again, just click the star icon to favorite that template so that it appears at the top of the new quote screen. Another useful tip about quote templates is that you'll want to select the appropriate template group because quotes in the same template group are listed together from the new quote screen. So on this screen, you can organize each column in an ascending or descending order so that it's easy to find the template you're looking for to start creating a new quote. So let's summarize the benefits of using quote templates. And right away, the benefit is that it's easy to edit and use quote templates. So from that new quote screen, simply click the edit button and then you'll be taken to the edit template screen. And you can tell because the upper left, you see the edit template screen name, and then you can click you can see that in the far left column, we have the pencil icon and just click that to edit the quote template. So remember that quote templates set default settings for new quotes created in CPQ. So when we edit a quote right away, we can see some of the default settings that quote templates control. In the template setup screen, price modifiers can be set for quote templates. So we have the quote price modifier and quote recurring price modifier fields, which determine the price modified for the entire quote. So let's say for a specific service you sell, you always want to meet a certain margin goal You can set that here with these fields. Another default setting controlled by quote templates are the order quarter settings. And Mitchell's going to expand on this section later, but order quarter is how your customers view and sign quotes. And order quarter has its own template and formats that you can also set by default from the order quarter template. For example, if you want to have a certain style or format in your order quarter page, include or remove the e-signature field, or add lines like terms and conditions, you can set that here from your quote template. Also, we have term and recurring conditions that can be set by default from quote templates. For example, let's say your team has a standard 36-month contract for each managed service that they sell. You can set that by default in a managed service template for your team so that they're not setting this manually for each quote they create. Quote templates can also control the tabs and content in your quotes. So this further simplifies the process because new quotes created can already have products and content on there. So this really saves time for your team and helps standardize the quoting process. And lastly, quote templates do so much more, such as determining publish and delivering settings and adding attachments or videos to your quotes that you send to customers. So really utilize this robust feature that is quote template.
All right. So now that we have created our quote using a template, the next thing we need to do is assign a customer and a title. And fortunately, if we actually started the process as Jennifer suggested by creating our quote from an opportunity, well, the customer is already taken care of for us. That's one of the big advantages of creating your quotes from opportunities is that we pull in all that information that you've already entered in, such as that customer detail from the opportunity itself. So it saves time creating quotes. It also makes more sense from a process standpoint because our sale doesn't begin with a quote. That's not the first interaction we have with the customer. There's always some conversation, some back and forth, some qualification, and all that work is done while we're still tracking them as a lead. That lead is tracked as an opportunity. However, I live in the real world and I know not everyone out there is tracking their leads in their sales process within PSA. Some of you are jumping straight in with that quote. So what if we're not using opportunities? How does that process look like? Where does that differ? So I'll go ahead and cover that difference as well. If you're skipping the opportunity for whatever reason, you create a little bit of extra work for yourself. And that first step you now need to do, since we don't have that customer data, is to search for and find that customer. So in this case, that's what we're doing here from that customer search. I can identify who we're quoting to and then attach them to the quote. It's just a little extra step that we have if we skip the initial piece of including that opportunity. Once we've added the customer, the next step we need to do, regardless of whether we created from an opportunity or started directly at the quote within PSA, is to rename the quote. And that's because this field is going to be customer facing. And if you created from a template, well, we're going to use that template name as the quote name. And what you name your templates is probably named to be intuitive to your internal team. It doesn't need to be customer facing. So we need to go ahead and make sure that is renamed every time we create a new quote. If you're creating from an opportunity, we'll pull in that opportunity summary line. Now that might be customer facing depending on what your naming scheme is for your opportunities, but more often than not, your team are probably labeling their opportunities in a way that's useful for them. So still, you want to make sure that you rename that quote. Last thing I want to touch on this screen are two quick little indicators you have up in the top right there, where we can go ahead and quickly see, do I have a customer attached? In this case, yes, I see that little person icon. And do I have an opportunity attached? In this case, no, which is what that leaf with the plus icon means. I still need to attach an opportunity, and that's because I skipped that step initially. So not only do I now have to select the customer, I now have to manually create that opportunity after the fact. So really, it's creating a little bit of extra work for me going straight into the quote, but we can still handle that flow. Now, when it comes to attaching a customer, you can actually have more than one contact on a quote. Why is that? Well, the contacts may be used different ways. You may have one contact that is actually being quoted to, another one that we're shipping products to, and a third, let's say, where it's actually being billed or invoiced. We can go ahead and set these up on the quote itself. We can select these manually for the different types of contact on the quote within CPQ, or we could have set these on the opportunity up front, and then we'll just import in those different contacts. Once the contacts are set, we can then also select multiple different sites This is especially useful for products that may need to be shipped to a completely different physical location than where the person you're quoting to or billing is residing.
All right, that takes us into our next section in the five-step quoting process. And this is the really exciting part where we add the main sides and toppings, add products and services to the template. And I just want to bring back our business case here. Remember, we have qualified a lead that's ready to be quoted for hardware services and managed services. And we'll see how using the correct product and service sourcing options in CPQ actually make this process much easier. So I want to ask again a new question. What are some common mistakes made when entering line items on a quote? So feel free to use the box there and enter your responses. Okay, people are creating a new item rather than selecting one from the system. This is a really great one, and I really appreciate you for saying that. And we'll look at how you can actually source products from the right system, either your e-commerce site, from your distributors, or from the PSA product search, which really helps reduce those errors and people accidentally creating new products that clog up the product catalog. Okay, good. Typos. Yes, people make many typos in their line items, and we'll see that when you source from the right location, those line item typos are reduced or completely eliminated. Okay, so let's start and discuss product sourcing in CPQ. We can divide it into two main types. That's hardware and services. Let's look at hardware first. So when you're sourcing hardware for your quotes, we recommend using Edelweiss, punch-out sites, or Import. And that's because you get access to real-time pricing from your distributors or vendors. So in this example, we see Edelweiss shows all our vendors that have a certain product, and we can see that the real-time pricing and availability. Also, we recommend using these three options because you get access to massive vendor catalogs, images, and product specifications. So if you're sourcing directly from your vendor, such as Amazon or Dell, it makes it easy to add that detail in your quote line items without error. Also, you get access to other features like product descriptions and images that add that detail and personal touch to your quotes. It makes your quotes look much more professional and much more consistent each time. You can also import entire e-quotes from vendor sites, and we'll look at how to do this in just a moment. Okay, let's look at sourcing services in CPQ. We recommend using product search. So just like we saw from the responses, sometimes people are creating new items instead of using existing items from the PSA product catalog. And you can stop this by having your team use the product search instead. And so using product search allows you to, from CPQ, use your PSA integrated product catalog to source from directly into your quotes. Also, if you have created service or agreement class products in PSA, they can be sourced into CPQ. So all of those conditions and recurring amounts are set by default from the PSA product catalog. All right, so that's hardware and services. So let's look at where we can add this content, and that's on the Prepare Content screen in CPQ. So right away on the Prepare Content screen, we see the Quote Content toolbar. In that toolbar, that's where new line items can be added, which we recommend, of course, using product search. You can also add new comment lines. So if you want to add detail or an asterisk under a line item, use the comment line there. Then the rest of the toolbar includes the product search and other other product sourcing options. And at the end of the toolbar tab, you have the More drop down there, which gives you even more quote features, such as exporting your quote into a different format. Then we have the quote content tab. So these tabs appear here by default based on the quote templates that we looked at. But we not only have quote tab templates as well as quote templates. So here on this toolbar, if you click the plus icon at the far right, you can add new quote tabs templates that you have created for your team. And we'll look at quote tabs later. Also, you can click the drop-down arrow next to a tab name to get access to mass actions, such as editing a tab, editing the grid layout, which determines what fields you see on that tab, and also rename tabs. Okay, so let's look at sourcing products, sourcing hardware products using Utilize. So when I enter the prepare content screen initially, I'm on the cover letter tab. So I want to be sure I switch over to hardware first, then click Utilize to source hardware from Utilize. So right away, I see the search criteria pod. And from here, I can enter a few keywords, such as rack mount power strip, because I know in our example, we'll need a rack mount power strip to do this network rack installation. So once I enter those keywords, I click search, and right away, I see a table that includes all the search results. And I can also filter this table using filters such as category, manufacturer, or even distributor. In the right side, I can see there on the top of the columns the names of the distributors, whether or not they have that product available. And I can also refresh the pricing on the screen using the cloud icon. So let's look closely at the different cells here. In a cell where that distributor has that product available, we'll see the distributor name and the price. So if that cell has a green background, that means that that distributor has the cheapest price among the distributors with that product available. And below that, below the price, we can see there are two numbers separated by a forward slash. The first number is how much of that item your distributor has on hand. And then the second number is how many items are being delivered to that distributor. So this is really useful when you want to plan ahead. If you know you're going to quote many of the exact same type of product and you want to source that product from the same distributor, you can plan ahead by seeing what kind of products they have on hand. So this is a really great feature in Utilize. Another excellent option here is that you can select multiple products on the Utilize list and compare them. So click the checkbox next to those items on the row and then click the compare button. And this takes you to the product comparison screen, which allows you to see those details side by side. So if your quote preparer is adding products to the quote, they can be sure they're sourcing the best product for your customer. Also, you can even attach a version of this table to your customer. So if you want to give your customer different options, you can do so directly from Utilize in CPQ. So this is a really great feature. So I'll go ahead and close this screen. And now I'm ready to select the product I want to add to the quote. I'll easily do that by just clicking in the cell there. And then we see that that line item has been added to the hardware tab. Okay, let's look at another way we can source products. Hardware specifically, and that's using punch-out sites. So punch-out sites are a great feature in CPQ because it allows you to source products from your connected e-commerce sites, such as Amazon or Dell. In fact, you can use any CXML website. You can connect any CXML website to this feature as well. So that means if your team has its own e-commerce site, or your company has an e-commerce site, you can have your administrator integrate it into CPQ so that you can source from any or even your e-commerce site directly in CPQ. So to do this, go ahead and click the Punch Out Sites button, and we'll see a drop down here showing the available integrated punch out sites. And in our example, I'm going to use Amazon to source our network rack cabinet. So once I click that, I'm taken to the Amazon business account that's connected to the system. And we all know how to use our most popular or common e-commerce site. Just simply enter the keywords or product number into the field, add it to the shopping cart, and then proceed to checkout and complete the shipping information and checkout details. For Amazon specifically, once you enter your shipping and checkout details, you'll be able to confirm the order. And you'll see a screen here, which is the preview punch-out quote screen in CPQ. And with this, you can confirm that line item that you put in the checkout in the Amazon account and then click Save to add it to your quote. Another really great thing about punch-out sites and Amazon specifically is that once you put that product in your cart and submit it to be approved, it's waiting in approval and it doesn't go into your internal approval until the customer signs the quote. So this is a really great feature so that you're not actually creating or pushing out purchase orders that aren't yet approved by your customer. So once your customer approves that quote, then it goes into the internal purchasing approval systems there. So I'll go ahead and click save after I've confirmed those line item details. And now we can see that line item's added to the quote. Now I want to also show you some other hardware sourcing options here. We have the paste quote option. So this allows you to paste Excel quotes directly into CPQ. For example, if you have a referrer for your team who is gaining new leads and perhaps showing quotes through an Excel spreadsheet, you can actually import that spreadsheet easily into CPQ to build your quote from that. We also have the import feature, which allows you to import e-quotes from sites like Arrow, Ingram, Dell, and Take Data. So if you build out quotes in those vendor distributor sites, you can import the entire e-quote into CPQ, which is a really excellent feature that saves time. All right, so on to services. And recall for services, we recommend using PSA product search. So in the quote content toolbar, go ahead and click the product search button, and it takes you to the product search screen. And here we can see the target tab is services because I clicked product search from the services tab, but I can also change the target tab for which line items will be added. So before we go into how to use product search, let's look at that actual product in PSA. So now I'm here in the PSA product catalog and I'm looking at our network rack installation services product. And this is a service class, this is a service type bundle class product in PSA. But first we see here that the price and cost are grayed out because they're set by components in this bundle. Then we see the product type and product class fields. So the product type is for internal purposes. So my team knows what type of product it is, but the product class determines how the product moves through the PSA system. And bundle class products create work plan phases and tickets when the opportunity is converted from an opportunity to a project. So these are really useful to use when you're actually selling services that because it makes it easy to add different components of that service in one product using bundle class service product. So here we also see in that product catalog, we have the bundle pricing pod, and that has the calculated price set. So it's easier to set that price based on the components here, which we have as device preparation and installation. And the quantities on the components actually become budget hours when we make this conversion from an opportunity to a project. So now that we've seen that, and I can go ahead and add that search criteria into the pod, and I'll add installation and bundle in the product class search options. Click search, and I can see my products there. I'll click attach to add that product to the services tab. So we can see the bundle class product is there with all the components as expected. Another way you can add service type products to your template is that you can actually add them to the way you can add this to the quote is adding it to the template first. So if you add your service products to the template, each time a new quote is created from that template, the product is already there. So that further saves time because your team doesn't need to source products from product search. So if you find that your team is accidentally adding new line items individually, you can actually just create a template that already has that product if you know you often add this product to a certain type of template you use. So another thing I want to show here is that you can edit your tabs and edit the tab that you've added a product to and make it a tab template. So in the admin only tab options there, just click use tab template. And then when you're on any quote, any one quote, you can click the plus item icon to add a new tab. So this will allow you to add a tab template. So if you've made it multiple tab templates that have different products added already, this can really save time. All right, lastly, let's go ahead and add the managed service product because we have ongoing monitoring that we're quoting in our business case. So again, we'll use product search for this. So if I click the product search icon and add network in the manufacturer part number, an agreement in the product class, I click search and I can easily find that agreement class product, which has recurring recurring conditions that have been added from the PSA product catalog. So I'll go ahead and click attach, and we can see that that's also been added to the correct target tab. So once that's added, lastly, I can also check the quote header and see that the recurring price information has been updated accordingly. So lastly, let's just go ahead and finish this quote template out by deleting unused tabs. So I'll go ahead and click the drop down next to each tab name that I don't want to use and delete that tab. So now that I've deleted any unused tabs, I can review the quote header to see the total recurring gross profit and recurring gross profit information. And this is great to review so that you know that you're meeting your quoting or margin goals for your team before sending out the quote.
All right, now that we have built out our quote and we have all of our content on there, it's time to get the quote in the hands of our customers with step 4, publish, review, and deliver. So one thing to keep in mind is, how do you know when the customer has actually seen your quote? If you send out your quote as PDF, how do you know they've looked at it, if they've even gotten it and received it? Well, it's hard to without actually being in communication with them. If you're just using PDF, I mentioned at the start that Order Porter is my favorite CPQ feature, and this is one of the reasons that you can actually see that yourself. Don't worry though, if you still like that PDF version of the quote, that is still included. They can access the PDF from that Order Porter page, but you can be notified automatically as soon as that customer looks at the quote. That way you're kept in the loop. You don't have to sit there and wonder, have they seen it yet? You know exactly when. And that's also the perfect time to reach out and engage with the customer when they have your quote in front of you, when they're actively thinking about you. It also offers you a lot more choice and flexibility with how you actually build your quotes. One of my favorite parts is you can actually build in choices for the customer on one single quote. So if those kind of recurring services we're selling, if we have different packages or different tiers of service for them to shop between, today you might be building out multiple different quotes to represent those different solutions that you're selling. First of all, that's a lot of work. It's more to manage. Second of all, it is pretty much impossible to forecast off of that because you're never going to win both of those. There's only one customer that's shopping around. So we want to make sure all that detail and that flexibility is built into a single quote. And we can make sure we're capturing the customer's interest using that. Any indication they make on which service they want from Order Porter, it'll be reflected back on the CPQ quote as well, along with their actual customer approval. So they can go ahead and digitally sign off on a quote on their own time. They'll have to schedule a time with your sales rep, find a time you're both available. Whenever it's front of mind for them, even 11 o'clock at night right before they go to bed, they could have a burst of motivation to log on, sign that quote. They can do that right then and there on their own time. And finally, if you are shopping around for your products from various vendors, the prices you're getting from those vendors may not be good forever. They likely are only good for a limited time. Well, we don't want the customer to be under the impression that, oh, I can just go ahead and approve this 3 months from now. The prices that we quoted them are no longer good. So we can build in expirations into our quote. The customer can still log in and see the quote on Order Porter, but they won't actually be able to approve because that version of the quote is no longer available. It has expired. And finally, one just nice little thing we can include is a video for a personal touch. Just gives the option to kind of show off a little bit more. Maybe it's a personal introduction from me explaining what's on the quote. Maybe it's a video advertising some other solutions and services we offer. But just adding that kind of multimedia aspect of the quote just helps it go that extra notch higher. So now that I've sold you on why you should be using Order Porter, here's how we actually go ahead and publish our quote from the Publish and Deliver screen. This is where we can select what templates we want. And in this case, I don't need to select any because I've predefined these up front when Jennifer selected that quote template earlier. So I already have my Order Porter template selected and the PDF that I want to use, as well as a little video that I've decided to include. When I'm ready, I can go ahead and click Publish, and now ConnectWise CPQ will generate that quote for me. Both that PDF, which you can see previewed up there at the top, as well as that interactive Order Porter page. Now, this is where that review in the Publish, Review, and Deliver comes into play. We want to make sure that everything looks crisp and perfect before we send it out. So we can actually click both those links up there to review both the PDF and the Order Porter page, which we're going to do right now. So here I can pull up my PDF and it looks good to me. I can see I've included my branding onto that overall template. That template is going to match what is both on the PDF and order porter. And we pulled in all the details from the quote, including the text, cover letters, executive summaries, terms and conditions, line items, all the good detail listed out on my PDF. Now, let's take a look at my order porter. And here I can see we still have that link to my PDF at the top. I can see my video over there on the right. And as I scroll down, I can see the products and services we've included. They've actually been broken out into different tabs. I can see a summary of all the prices, both one-time and recurring. And now down here at the bottom of the order porter page, we can go ahead and digitally sign off and go ahead and capture that approval. That approval is actually going to be captured not only on the quote itself and CPQ, but also we'll regenerate that PDF now with the signature information that we've captured from here included. Once we are happy with everything, there is one final step to do, and that is to hit send email. This will go ahead and send it out to the customer, and then I can wait patiently for that alert that comes in as soon as they open up that order porter page. Let's go ahead and fast forward a bit and just say, hey, the customer did end up approving this. Here's whether that approval information has been captured on the quote. And we're also going to see an email alert coming through letting me know that my quote has been approved, so I can go ahead and take action. And there's that email alert giving me a summary of the selections that the customer made on order porter.
All right, that takes us to our last step of the 5-step quoting process, and that's update the PSA opportunity. And this is really key in the sales to service handoff. So you've already done all of this work to successfully sell to your customer, but what you do next is equally as important. And the key to setting that up is updating the PSA opportunity and attaching documents once you've won that quote. So after you win the quote, you'll see the win screen here. And in the leftmost pod, we see the signature info and other data captured when that customer signed the order porter page. But we'll also want to update the quote status info. So if you're running reports from CPQ based on quote status or post status, just be sure you always update the quote status and post status from the win screen. So I'll do that respectively, setting one and post it and click save. So I want to ask the audience again, how do you ensure that your clients feel valued after they sign? So there's been some great participation here. So go ahead and use the chat again and let us know. Great. So you might want to send them something digitally, like sending a quick email or telling them thank you, and that's really great to let them know that they feel valued after signing. But also a great way to do that is really excelling in that sales to service handoff. So let's do that now, and we set this up by updating the PSA opportunity. So in the win screen, in the final steps pod, click Update Opportunity, and this will take you to the opportunity details screen. Now, I want to note that you can also access this screen after you publish a quote, but before the customer signs, so that you can update the opportunity, showing that you've quoted estimates. But again, if you've added estimates from the very start, because you started from the PSA opportunity, you already have that estimate information there in the forecast pod. But I do want to point out how to set either an estimate or products in that forecast pod. And we do this by setting the appropriate value in the opportunity grouping type field. So let's break this down. You have two key options here, and that's group by line item or group by tab. So use group by tab when the PSA opportunity stage is quoted, committed, or essentially before the customer has actually signed the quote. And then use group by line item when the actual PSA opportunity has been won. And that's because group by tab adds estimates to the forecast pod, whereas group by line item adds products to the opportunity forecast pod. And this is really important to know the distinction between, because if you're still in the estimate stage, your customer hasn't actually signed the quote, you don't want to create new products, and you don't want to add new products that were perhaps sourced from the e-commerce site because your customer hasn't confirmed that quote yet. But if your customer has confirmed the quote, you'll want to use group by line item so that you do create new PSA products. So group by line item actually creates new products that can then be converted when the opportunity is won. So those products can be converted to a sales order to start the purchasing process. Or if you use group by tab, before the opportunity has actually been won, you only see the forecast. So that allows for sales forecasting so that you can forecast and project potential revenue before the opportunity has been won. So be sure to select the appropriate opportunity grouping type depending on where your opportunity is at. So let's look here at that forecast pod. If I select opportunity group type, group by line item, I'll see that products have been added to the opportunity forecast in PSA here. And I can tell because there's the product ID column, and each row contains links that navigate to that product so I can see product details. Instead, if I click group by tab, I instead don't see product IDs. I see this green check mark, this green box with a check mark that shows these are just estimates. They're not products in the PSA catalog. So some other key fields you want to change here: the expected close date, status, stage, and probability. The probability is set to 100 by default when the opportunity has been won, but just be sure you set the status and stage appropriately. Next, these two checkboxes here are really useful. So you can drop ship items, and if you select drop ship, even your e-commerce vendors will see that the items are selected as drop ship. Otherwise, you can also be sure to attach the documents from order porter and the signed quote into your PSA opportunity. So your team doesn't have to go into CPQ to see that those documents have been signed, because you can select this option to attach them into the PSA opportunity. Next, in the Sell tab settings pods, we have two key fields here: manage type and term and recurring. So manage type determines how that estimate or product will appear in the forecast pod. So if you're still at the estimate stage, the manage type will show these as estimates of that manage type. If you're in the product stage, you selected group by line item, you want to create products, the manage type will be applied to new products created that are in those specific tabs. Then we have the term and recurring field. And recall in our template tab, there is a term and recurring settings that you can change for that quote template. So actually, monthly was set by default from that quote template. And the template, setting this as the quote template really makes it easy so your term and recurring options transfer correctly into the opportunity. So further down on this same screen, we see two more key pods that I want to point out. First, the create new items pod. And you can see here, this includes those two hardware products that we sourced from Eatalize and the e-commerce site, respectively. So just be sure that you set the correct class type, category, and subcategory when you're creating new products that have been sourced from your distributors. Then we have our manage item pods, which is just another pod you can use to review the existing products, the ones that you source from the PSA product search, or existing products that are already in the PSA catalog. Just be sure you select the correct billable or dropship settings for those line items as well. And then when you're done, click Save. So now that we've updated our PSA opportunity, we can see that it's in a 1 and 1 closed status. So we see that the opportunity is mostly grayed out because it's not editable anymore. And the revenue margin and one field have been updated appropriately. Next, if we go to the product tab, we can see all our products have been added as expected. Because this quote has already been won, we want to make sure we have those products added so they're ready to be converted onto a sales order or onto a project. All right, so now this is the most important part of the sales to service handoff, and that's converting. So just be sure to convert that opportunity to the next item. You can do that here from the PSA opportunity by clicking convert in the toolbar there, or you can do it from the Win tab or the Win screen in CPQ. So from that Win screen, click convert opportunity, and you'll see the conversion screen that allows you to select the items that you want to create and even name them or attach items to them. Just be sure to select that checkbox at the very top there that allows you to create that item and then click save. And that finishes your 5-step quoting process.
All right, as we wrap up, I do have a couple key takeaways for you all. First, make sure you are starting your quoting process from a PSA opportunity. It's going to save you a lot of time, create more consistency, and it's in line with how your sales team is already functioning. They are working these leads before they start quoting. Even if they'd rather jump straight into the quote, there's some legwork that needs to be done, and we track that on the opportunity already. Next, make sure you are building robust quote templates to streamline that quote creation process. You can default products, you can default pricing, you can default branding, making sure that your quotes are going out in a streamlined fashion. They're being created faster and more consistently, something we both want. Then use appropriate product sourcing. You can't always build everything into the quote, so when products do need to be added, take advantage of the variety of tools you have at your disposal to bring products in. Punch-out sites, utilize search, and the PSA product catalog. Then, always review your quote before publishing, just to make sure it does have that perfect quality you're looking for. Mistakes happen. We know this. It doesn't always look the way you expect, so do that final pass over as you're publishing, just to make sure it looks perfect before it's in the customer's hands. And finally, update that PSA opportunity after you publish your quote. That way, ConnectWise PSA can continue to be your source of truth and all of your information, regardless of whether it's been started on the opportunity or started on the quote, is being passed over and we are being kept in sync. If you would like to learn more, if you have burning questions that you just forgot to ask while you were here, or if you're watching this as a recording later, please connect with us on our virtual community. This QR code will take you right there. And you can go ahead and chat with us, ask your questions, get feedback, or hear what other partners are doing in their quoting processes. You can also find this from the university. If you're looking for additional resources, if anything we talked about kind of piqued your interest and you'd like to learn more, these are some great assets for you. I know you can't click this screen. Don't worry. This QR code will take you to the same place that last one did, that virtual community. We've already created a post for this webinar with links to all these additional resources. So if you want to learn more, check it out. We have lots more to teach you on your learning journey through using ConnectWise CPQ. Now, this was more of an introductory webinar into the quoting process, but if you're looking to become a quoting professional, we all have a quote and proposal certification for you. You can register for and start taking your quoting to the max. All right, I'm going to say who has the first question, but I've already been responding to a bunch in the chat so far. But if you have any additional questions, now is the time to ask. Myself and Jen would be more than happy to answer any questions you have regarding your quoting process. All right, I do see a new question that came in. Is there anywhere that you can include internal notes like a design number or other things that you want services to understand? Yeah. So on that prepared content screen that Jen was showing earlier as she was building out line items, not everything that we include on the quote in that prepared content screen actually ends up in front of the customer. We can include a lot of relevant detail that maybe only your internal teams need to know, especially that service delivery team. So again, any and all information about that quote, capture it in that prepared content screen with line items that we can then hide and not display in the quote itself, but still include when we do our service handoff later on after the deal's been won.
That's right. So you can edit each line item and also add notes that only your team can see and that don't appear in the customer-facing quote.
Jen, do you have an instance of CPQ open right now that we could show where we could actually hide something on a prepared content screen?
Okay, let me just do that here. One moment, please.
While we get that loaded up, let me see if there are any other questions. In the PSA opportunity screen, where can you see which quote number it links to? By default, we sync over that quote number into the actual opportunity summary field if we are creating the opportunity after. If we're creating the opportunity first and then the quote, let me go ahead and pull up my opportunity and see where that information is typically being stored at. So on the opportunity, we are going to see in the attachments tab, we'll see the actual attachment of that quote PDF. So once we actually do that final publish after we publish the quote, we'll sync over that PDF document onto the opportunity itself. So that'll list the quote number there. But if you're looking for something more uh, obvious right off the bat, we can actually go ahead and move it over a couple different ways. One way I see it is have it entered into the quote notes. That can be set up as part of your CRM mappings when you're kind of creating the integration between the two. If it's not set up there by default, you could map that over. Another option would be to create a custom field and just have a CPQ quote number field on your main opportunity screen. That way it's always listed out, segmented on its own, and then we can map that over automatically whenever we're doing opportunity updates from CPQ to PSA. All right, so it looks like Jen has CPQ up now, and she's showing us where we can go ahead and add a product on and how we could hide that if we wanted.
All right, so if I've already added products here in the prepare content screen, if I want to edit that line item, I can just click the pencil icon and then I'll be able to edit all of these details. And as you know, not all of them will actually appear on the customer facing quote. That's actually determined by the grid layout. So if I want to edit the grid here, that part is what will appear on the customer facing part of the quote. But I can also
Actually,
go,
there's two different grid layouts. So this grid layout is what you'll see. There's a separate grid layout called output grid layout that controls, I guess, which line item details. If you go ahead and edit item, there's actually two checkboxes I'd like to call out on there. You see them both selected on that right-hand side, is printed and is totals included. If you deselect both of those, this item will be completely invisible to the customer. So it'll be included under quote, but that specific line item is gone. So that's a useful way to include any specific details you want on the quote. That'll then be passed off to your service delivery, but not shown externally to the customer. All right, I don't see any more questions coming in. All right, so in that case, I guess I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. We will see you on our next webinar.
thank you and goodbye.